Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. If you're going to be the other man, at least have the decency to not invoice her husband by proxy. Today on rSpace, account closed, marriage terminated. Wife spent thousands of dollars to keep her affair partner quiet. I found out, kicked her to the curb, and took every dollar she had. One of my worst fears has always been to put my all into a relationship and end up with someone who doesn't treat it close to the same way. Not only did I end up with a wife who decided to cheat on me despite everything I've done for her, but she was also incredibly stupid in the process. And honestly, when I say that she was stupid, that's not even close to an understatement. In all of this, I'm just glad that I never made the mistake of having a child with this woman. Here's the situation. I, 34 male, have been married to Bree, 32 female, for 4 years. And in that time, our fortunes have changed quite a lot. When we got married, I was starting out at a promising tech company, and things were very comfortable for us. But now, 4 years down the line, we are doing pretty great. She works in finance, but my earnings outstrip hers by quite a bit. I'm hesitant to say that we are rich, but again, we're doing very well for ourselves. I haven't thought that there was anything incredibly lacking in our marriage. We were still very romantic with each other. We went on trips once or twice a year, and we each had hobbies that we could put our all into. Work was going well too. I know that's not all that there is to life, but it was really hard for me to see any reason for her to be expressly unhappy. At least there was nothing that she had communicated that would have led me to believe she wasn't happy being married to me. Sadly, I found out that my wife had been cheating on me despite how happy I felt we were. And with that, everything fell apart. It was how I found out that I think is a lot more interesting. If it didn't happen to me, I would have considered it to be hot gossip if I heard it from someone else. But it is a lot less amusing when it happens to you. I was looking over some of our financial paperwork, and while it wasn't the actual account balance that looked suspect to me, it was that I saw several pretty large withdrawals that I couldn't put a reason for. They were in several thousands of dollars, taken out from our joint account, ranging from $1,000 several times to as high as $7,000. Even if the smaller withdrawals could be explained away, there was absolutely no reason why there would have been a withdrawal of that much that I couldn't explain. Those kinds of expenses tended to be only around special occasions when making large purchases, and even then, they'd be card purchases most of the time. In this case, it was clear that they were withdrawals. I knew that something was off, and it had to be that Bree was making withdrawals for some kind of discrete reason. Otherwise, I'd have had some kind of explanation for what was going on. I haven't done our taxes or scrutinized our finances in a very long time, especially as work got more demanding. I think she knew that and never expected me to find out. But I'm taking several days off for my annual leave and just decided to do that so I could check if it was time for us to consider buying a house. That was the lucky thing that made me find all of this out. As much as I knew that she was probably keeping some kind of secret from me, I just decided to confront her instead of snooping. I felt that I could trust her enough to explain what was going on, and I chose to give her the benefit of the doubt instead of just jumping to the worst case scenario. So when I went up to her with the papers in hand and told her that something was amiss, I noticed her body stiffen. That wasn't a good sign, and if it was clear that whatever the money had been used for was something that she didn't want me to know about. I told her that it amounted to $16,500, and that was far from an insignificant amount. It had been pulled out over a 3-month period, and there was nothing in the house, or that I was aware of, that justified that much money just steadily disappearing. It was very concerning to me, and I made her aware of that. It took her a while to say anything, but I was glad when she did. I was only glad because at that point, I thought that I was hearing the truth. She told me that her brother had been going through some very serious financial trouble, and he was too proud a man, which was true, to ask me for help. So he asked her, and she did what she could with the money in our joint account because it was family involved, and she couldn't sit around and watch him struggle to get himself out of the hole he was in. To be honest, I understood. However, the amount she had taken was a lot, and even if her brother couldn't ask me himself, there was no reason why she couldn't tell me and I'd just act like I knew nothing. She said he had begged her not to let me know at all, and that he was going to replace the money in due time. She said that was still true, so it was a permanent loss. The excuse made enough sense to me because I knew that her brother was a restaurant owner, and those kinds of businesses can go under pretty easily. I still couldn't understand why she didn't tell me, even if her brother had made her beg not to. The money she had taken belonged to both of us, so that was the least that I deserved. It didn't make sense that I only found out because I was looking at financial documents. I told her that I was hurt that she hadn't decided to do things the right way, and she apologized. It sounded genuine. At that point, I kept a closer eye on her finances, and for about 5 weeks after I confronted her, there was nothing of note. The withdrawals stopped entirely. I didn't notice anything odd about her behavior, and I moved on from it. The only thing that related to the money that happened within those 5 weeks was me asking when her brother might be planning to return the money. As I mentioned earlier, I'd been trying to see how practical it was for us to try and buy a house, and how much we'd be able to put down. I needed to know when we would get the money back so I could plan ahead. She said she wasn't sure and that she'd ask him, and that was it. Something happened exactly at the 5-week mark, and that was what made it clear that there was a lot more going on than I initially thought. I was going through the mail before work one morning, and when I opened one of the envelopes that had arrived, it was a piece of paper with only a few words on it. "This is your last warning. I mean business." It was so cryptic that I was genuinely frightened. It was threatening, and I had no idea what it was about, which just made it worse. I immediately called her from the bedroom, and I showed her what the letter said. I asked her if she had any idea what it was about, and she immediately shook her head no. For some reason, I just wasn't convinced, though. I asked her if she was sure because I hadn't been messing around with anyone who would have said something like that. The envelope had no name on it, so I couldn't even be sure it was meant for us. But the address was correct. We had been living there since we got married, so it was unlikely it was meant for the previous tenant. At that point, some pieces connected mentally. I asked her if it had anything to do with the money her brother would borrowed. At that point, I wasn't even doubting that her brother borrowed the money. I was just doubting that it had been for the reasons she had mentioned. I asked her to tell me the truth because something just felt off about the whole situation and the way she was feigning ignorance. It just wasn't convincing enough to me. For the second time, she decided to tell me the truth on the matter of the money. She admitted that she had lied the first time around and that she was so sorry. She didn't know how I'd react if she told me the truth because the truth was so silly and stupid, and I'd think a lot less of her. I told her that I wouldn't, and she should go ahead and say what was up. According to her, she was being blackmailed. The person blackmailing her was someone she had known in college. She had done something. The person had been a witness, and now that person, knowing that she was well for herself, was trying to milk her dry. I couldn't help it, but I shook my head at that because she had really given a blackmailer close to 20 grand. I told her that if that was the truth, there was even more reason why she should have told me. What was her endgame? Was the intention to keep sending money to this person until there was nothing left to send? I asked her why she didn't call the police, especially if she knew the person who was blackmailing her. According to her, the person threatened that they'd release what she had done if she tried to call the police on her. At that point, I asked her what it was that she had done that was so bad that she could be blackmailed over it. She was extremely hesitant to talk about it. I told her that the only way we'd be able to do damage control is if the person chose to release their secret would be if we knew what the secret was beforehand. I told her that I deserved to know, not just as her husband, but as a person who had been unintentionally contributing to the blackmailer's bank account. It looked like she was thinking for a long time, and at that point, I couldn't tell if she was trying to find the words to use or if she was just trying to make up a story. I didn't know if I could believe the things she was saying anymore. Eventually, she let it all out. She claimed that when she had been in college, she and her friend had been involved in a hit and run. Bree had been the one driving and she wanted to stop, but the friend pressured her to keep going, so they did. She said she called 911 as soon as they got somewhere safe. There was a news report the next day that mentioned the accident, but the person was in stable condition. She said she and the friend had grown apart after that, and that friend was the person blackmailing her. I didn't want to believe what she was saying because it was so hard to believe her after I found out she had been lying about her brother, but in this case, it was hard for me to understand why someone would lie about being involved in a hit and run, so I decided to believe her. She said she stopped sending the person money since we talked about it the last time, and that's why the person sent the threatening letter. I told her that we'd be best off calling the police, but she still refused. Despite the fact that I knew it was the best choice, I get that she was scared about being outed, but unless she got rid of her ex-friend, there was absolutely nothing that was going to stop her from leaking that piece of information if she wanted to. She'd end up sending $100,000 if care wasn't taken. I told her that sending her to the police was the most effective thing to do, and even then, after being released from jail, she could still decide to tell the world. I told her it was better to take the chance and hope that jail time would set her straight. Despite all the reasoning I tried to lay down for her, she still refused to get the police involved, so I left her to it. I told her I'd let her manage the situation, but she could not take another dime of our money to pay off this person. That was what I told her, but I knew that I was going to take matters into my own hands. I was going to find the messages with the person, since she had refused to give a name, and I would take it up with the law enforcement myself. I knew it was the right move to make, and what she was doing was not going to help anyone. So once she was asleep that night, I grabbed her phone and went through the messages, looking for whoever it was that was blackmailing her. I know she couldn't have deleted the messages because it didn't make sense to delete the only evidence that someone was blackmailing you. However, I didn't find anything of note in her messages app. I checked her social media too, but there was still nothing of note. I had to check her email inbox before I found what I was looking for. The email address was anonymous, but going through the messages, I saw that she referred to the person as Tate in one of the emails, begging the person to reconsider. She said that she'd do anything for the person to not say anything. I had to climb up the email thread and I had to go pretty far, but once I did, I found the full story, and I realized that yet another time she had been lying to me. I doubted that the hit and run story was a real thing that had happened. She just made up a lie that sounded suitably severe on the spot. She was clearly a good liar if I kept falling for everything she told me. I don't know how long it had been happening, but she had been having an affair with a guy called Tate. Apparently, after some time, she had asked to call it off, and Tate didn't like that because, apart from the intimacy, he was getting a few milder financial perks from her. Her saying she didn't want to see him anymore meant that he wasn't going to get those things any longer, and I guess he wanted to make sure he took a chunk of the cake before he left for good. She had kept paying him over a 3-month period so that he wouldn't expose her to me. Based on one of the attachments, they had recorded a tape, and he sent it to her so that she'd see how bad it would be if she disobeyed him. I downloaded it, but to be honest, I didn't watch it. I couldn't. What I was reading was bad enough. At a point, she had even asked him if he'd stop if they started the affair again, but he clearly wasn't interested in $100 here and there because he had seen how much he could squeeze out of her when her back was against the wall. It was pathetic reading her desperation in the emails. She had gotten herself into a horrible position, and the only way out that she could see was to continue sending him money. A few days after I had confronted her, he sent another email asking her to get $2,000 to him in cash, but she hadn't responded. He sent 2 more emails, and it was only after that that she told him to stop emailing, because she wasn't able to do anything else for him at that point. Needless to say, the letter came because he wanted to pressure her into continuing things. He had mentioned that he was going to pull the trigger in one of the more recent emails, and when she didn't respond, I guess that was his warning shot. Since I still had her phone, I took the email address for later. I'll do my best to find out more about the guy, but for now, that's all I need, besides the numerous screenshots I took of the entire email thread. I'm going to confront her tomorrow, but before I do that, I need to figure out what I'm going to do about Tate. Is there really any point in me trying to get him sent to jail? It's a lot of stress. I'd much rather put all the pressure on my cheating wife because it was her actions that got us here in the first place. Tate is her headache, not mine. Edit. I'm glad to see a lot of people who agreed with me that I shouldn't bother myself with Tate. I'll confront him, but I won't deal with the legal side of things because I have things I consider to be bigger problems. Update. I was here several weeks ago regarding my wife who has been blackmailed by her affair partner. He was threatening to tell me about their affair, including sending me a tape they made if she didn't continue to send him money. She sent him over $15,000 over 3 months, and I only found out because I was lucky. The first part of my plan was to confront her, and I eventually did that, but before that point, I made sure that I had met up with the divorce lawyer. It took a few days, but once everything was set, I told her to tell me the truth about the blackmail situation, and she told me that she already had. But I made it clear to her that I knew she was lying. I knew that she hadn't been in a hit and run or anything of that sort. She was just a really good liar, and it made me wonder about all the other lies that she might have told during the time we had been married. She reiterated that she hadn't lied about anything, but to make her look stupid, I asked her who Tate was. I think she assumed that he must have finally chosen to expose her, and she burst into tears. I didn't try to correct her notion because it was better for her to feel like all that money she had paid was a waste. Not that I found her out. She went straight to begging me, but I didn't budge. I told her that there was no point. She was free to have as many affairs as she wanted, and the best part was that there wouldn't be anyone for them to blackmail her with, because I wasn't going to be around anymore. She was sobbing at that point. I told her that the thing that hurt me most was that our marriage had been fine. We had been doing well for ourselves, but she decided to have an affair, and she'd paid the price. I handed her the divorce papers, and she refused to take them because she was too busy weeping. I didn't bother myself with all that. I went to our bedroom and packed a bag for her because I couldn't sit around and wait for her to do it on her own. Then, I called an Uber for her to sister's house, and when it came, I put her bag inside and told her to leave. She tried to beg, but when I raised my voice, she finally scurried off. She tried to come back once before the divorce negotiation started, but when I answered the door with a golf club, she backed off. The divorce didn't go to court, and I'm glad it didn't, because I told her I was going to expose her to everyone if she wasted my time. She had been scared that Tate would simply expose himself to me, but I'd make it worse if she tried me. The apartment was rented, but I got to keep it. We split the joint account down the middle, but I took back everything she had taken, and then some, and she didn't fight it at all. What she was left with was a lot less than a newly divorced woman would want to have in her account. Even though I earned more, I made sure alimony wasn't even on the table. There was very little left for her. I didn't feel a twinge of guilt. I considered emailing Tate to tell him that I found out about the little racket, but I didn't feel like it was worth it. I wanted him to continue to torment Bree for a little longer. I wish that I hadn't been cheated on at all, but since I was, why did it have to be in such a stupid manner? I didn't lose anything at the end of the day since she's paid me back, but it has been such an irritating ordeal. I'm just glad to be out of it. Your wife clearly underestimated you and overestimated her ability to juggle lies. Between the fake helping my brother story, the made-up hit and run, and the affair, it's like she was testing how far she could push things before you got on. The fact that she broke down as soon as you mentioned Tate shows that the game was already over in her head. At the end of the day, you didn't really lose anything. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.